Welcome to Evidence-Based Landscape Design for Whole Child Model. My name is Sarah Coles, and I am the Executive Director of Texas Children and Nature Network. We are excited to have you with us today. We are recording our session today. Thank you so much for joining us. Please mute yourselves and turn off your cameras for the presentation to save bandwidth for all of our attendees and for a clean recording. If you could, I'll be monitoring the chat so you can share your questions there. I will share them with our presenters. Please remember to keep your comments in the chat kind. Melody is running tech for us today. Thank you so much, Melody. As I said, we are recording the session, and I'll share the recording in a follow-up email. If you're uncomfortable with your name showing, you can change it to anonymous and then private message Melody with your name for our attendance. Also, if your Zoom name doesn't match the name you registered with, please change your name or let Melody know. If you're in need of a certificate and we don't have your name, we will not be able to provide that certificate. And just a reminder, if you're needing a certificate, you'll see the directions in the email that got you to this Zoom link. I'm going to go ahead and do our land acknowledgement. Texas Children and Nature Network is headquartered in Austin, and as such, I'm on the ancestral and unceded land of the Tonkawa, Comanche, and Sauna people. Our ongoing colonial presence on indigenous lands compels us to take action now to counteract the effects of colonization. The work we do through the Texas Children and Nature Network is one small step towards that effort. In just a moment, I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat about land acknowledgements and those people groups. But for now, I'd like to go ahead and welcome our speaker today. Muntazar Monsur is with Texas Tech University. Thank you so much for joining us, and take it away.
Just one moment. Okay. Thanks for the generous introduction, Sarah. Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. I'm Muntazar Monsur. For accessibility, I'll briefly describe myself. I have black hair, black facial hair, and today I'm proudly wearing a red Texas Tech t-shirt. Before I begin, I would like to briefly share a little about myself, my journey, and the inspirations behind this talk. I originally studied architecture, and I have always been fascinated by how space and design become connected with childhood memories and our sense of place. During my time in architecture school, however, I quickly realized that these questions were rarely part of the conversation. We learned how to design buildings, but not necessarily how spaces shape childhood experiences. The curiosity eventually guided me toward research and landscape architecture. I began exploring how environments influence children's development, learning, and everyday experience. What you see here are some of my sketches. Through these drawings, I tried to capture memories of the beautiful four-story house in Chittagong, Bangladesh, where I grew up. My first research on childhood and environment, later published in Preventive Medicine, examined how, even in dense and often child-unfriendly megacities, certain spatial conditions can still support children's outdoor experience. The study focused on Dhaka, the capital of Bangladesh, and found that children living on dead-end streets tend to enjoy more opportunities for free outdoor play and greater independent mobility compared to those living in thoroughfare streets. And this study introduced me to the realm of research and helped me understand the value of empirical investigation and understanding about the complex and multifaceted relationship between childhood and the built environment. And my research journey continued through my PhD and postdoctoral work at NC State University, and now as an associate professor of landscape architecture at Texas Tech, where my work has brought me even closer to the study of early childhood environments. And this is what I see as my overarching goal: improve health, well-being, and learning by promoting nature-based environments for children and families. And my teaching, research, and outreach activities often overlap, all working towards that common overarching goal. But I want to talk a little bit about why this work is so important to me. I mean, one way to think about this is to think about the many benefits of nature. And these nature benefits for childhood is not just speculation. These are evidences established by research. But when we put the diagram beside the whole child model, it makes a lot more sense. In the whole child model of development, we are starting that all aspects of development are important, and our design or intervention should address all rather than just one or two. But to understand the whole child model, we need to first understand developmental domains. And developmental domains are not always neatly defined. If you look across early childhood literature, you will see different framework and categories, but there is also some overlap and consistency. So in my teaching of landscape architecture, especially when I try to connect design decisions with child development, I use a simplified model with these five developmental domains: physical and gross motor development, social and emotional development, cognitive and fine motor development, communication and language development, and fifth and final, sensory development. But what becomes really exciting is when we start mapping landscape elements to these domains. Suddenly, every design decisions, materials, textures, spaces, decisions of planting or plant species, all can be intentionally connected to how children grow, learn, and experience the world. But at the same time, it's important to recognize that these developmental domains are deeply interconnected. They don't operate in isolation. There is a significant overlap among them. And that's why I find it more useful to think of them in a radial model rather than as separate columns. It helps us see the big picture and the potential impact of our work connecting children with nature. Even when we design with one domain in mind, the benefits often spill over into others, and that interconnected impact is what makes this work so fascinating. Let's take gardening as an example. My most notable grants and research projects focus on the effects of outdoor environmental interventions on children's health. In my research, I have looked into what happens to preschool children's when they're engaged in hands-on gardening, specifically how it influences their physical activity and their fruit and vegetable preference. I have conducted this kind of research as part of USDA grant both in North Carolina and in West Texas, and across very different climates and conditions. We consistently see that gardening advances children's physical activity and their healthy eating preferences. And this diagram is showing kind of the research model. We often do a kind of a delayed intervention model and compare the differences of outcomes in an experimental fashion. What happens when children are doing gardening compared to what happens they're not engaged in gardening? What are the differences in outcome? For these research, we have built gardens, we have observed children, we have even measured their physical activity using accelerometers, and you can tell that it's very interesting when you're trying to observe preschool children and telling them to wear a device for a whole day. Um, but I mean, in terms of physical activity, it's probably not that difficult to understand that, of course, when children are engaged in gardening, they're lifting, they're squatting, they're digging, they're carrying water cans. So there is an understanding about why it would influence physical activity. But we all know it does do so much more, right? Gardening. When children are gardening, they ask questions, they have conversations, they express wonder, they observe, experiment, and imagine. And that's what really shifted my thinking. Nature connection in early childhood is never just about one domain. The benefits, as I said earlier, spill across domains in ways that are deeply interconnected. But I also have a kind of a personal story why I'm fascinated about this topic. When I was a PhD student at NC State, my wife was doing her PhD at the same time, and our daughter, she was 3 at that time. My professor, Professor Robin Moore, who's kind of a leading figure in children and nature, he gifted my daughter a tomato plant. And it was a very eye-opening experience for me because um, all the rich interaction that was happening between this tomato plant and my daughter, I told myself that I have no way to look into that when the tomato plant was not there. So it's a powerful thought in terms of designer and design educator that we often don't realize absence of richness in environment, especially in early childhood environment. So the work that I'm going to present today, I would like to acknowledge my former PhD student, now a postdoctoral scholar at the Natural Learning Initiative, Nazia Trina, whose dissertation research played a critical role in shaping this presentation. Dr. Trina and I have recently published several articles together. The most notable of these focus on early childhood environments and examine how landscape design can influence early science and STEM learning behaviors. And if you look into this research in the big picture that we were talking about, it is most closely connected with the domain of communication and language development. But the important question is, why do we need to talk about curiosity? In many of my discussion with Dr. Trina, we often reflect on how deeply we are invested in studying the relationship between landscape design and children's learning behaviors. However, we also notice that much of the existing research focuses on documenting these relationships, while relatively little work attempts to explain why environments influence such behaviors or what mechanisms might mediate these relationships. So curiosity fits well as a mediator in this relationship, why environment would advance early science learning behaviors or scientific thinking. And that realization led me to focus more intentionally on understanding curiosity and what it means to design environments that support it. By looking at curiosity more closely, we can begin to understand the underlying reasons why environments influence children's learning behaviors. This perspective may also help us rethink how we should design playgrounds and outdoor environments for children. And I would also like to highlight a Guardian post title, Why Does My Toddler Want to Play with the Box, Not the Toy? So Guardian had this really wonderful section, long running section, where readers answer other readers' question. Although this is not the central question of my discussion today, but it raises an interesting point that relate closely to our topic. And I will return to this question toward the end of the presentation. So why should we try to understand children's curiosity? In the bigger picture, curiosity is not just a personality trait. It is closely connected with several important developmental outcomes. Research shows that curiosity supports early scientific thinking, helps children become ready for school, strengthens executive functioning and problem-solving skills, and contributes to the joy of learning and overall emotional well-being. When children are curious, they are more likely to explore, ask questions, and engage deeply with the world around them. So when we think about curiosity in early childhood, it's not just an abstract idea. We see it in observable behaviors. Children show curiosity when they observe, explore, experiment with cause and effect, ask questions, build or construct, manipulate or alter. So when we design for curiosity, we are really designing for those behaviors. We are creating environments with affordances that invite children to look closer, try things out, test ideas, and wonder, ultimately increasing the likelihood that these curious behaviors occur. But why should we bother designing for curiosity in playgrounds? We often think about curiosity in the context of classrooms only or formal learning environments, but why not playgrounds. Curiosity manifests spatially. The environments we design can either enable curiosity or suppress it. For many children, playgrounds are actually their first laboratories, places where they observe, test ideas, and experiment with the world around them. Something that I often ask my students in the classroom, try to remember, when did you do your first ever experiment? And often the answer is either playground or a play environment. In the early years, play and learning are not separate activities. They're deeply intertwined. Early childhood is also a unique period when learning is largely spontaneous and not yet constrained by standardized tests or structured curricula. For these reasons, playgrounds present a powerful opportunity to design environments that nurture curiosity and exploration. As a designer and researcher, we also need to recognize what we are up against. We now have a new demon, a new villain, that is screen time. Screen time is becoming a major issue in children's lives, and there is a growing concern about how much time children spend with digital devices. Innovations are needed to help reduce excessive screen time. And as designers and landscape architects, we are challenged to create environments that can compete with powerful attention grabber such as smartphones, devices that connect children instantly to the entire digital world. The question then becomes, can we design outdoor environments that are engaging, intriguing, and rich enough to capture children's attention and curiosity in equally powerful ways? So, to talk about the negative consequences of screen time, Jonathan Haidt's famous book, The Anxious Generation, it looked mostly into teenagers or preteens, how harmful and damaging excessive screen time can be. Although the literature is comparatively new for early childhood, but we already know that excessive screen time is associated with delayed development, delayed speech, attention disorder, or social disorder. Today I want to talk briefly about a very interesting study. This study conducted experiments showing what toddlers learn on screen does not transfer to the real world. Let's say a toddler spend a lot of time assembling Lego blocks on a touchscreen. That cognitive ability won't transfer in the real world, meaning that kid would not be able to build with Lego blocks in the real world. And how fascinating and yet alarming is that? Think about the other way around. Have you ever seen a kid struggling to learn how to use screen? To talk about the importance of nature, why am I talking about screen time so much? I would like you to take a look at this side-by-side comparison. For every potential harmful consequences of screen time, there is an associated benefit for spending time in nature, and the list goes on and on. So I also want you to think about the critical need of nature connection from that point of view. And this is a recent article that was featured in Landscape Architecture Foundation. Can more green time mitigate the effects of too much screen time for youth? Collecting all the scientific evidence that how important green time or nature time will be in the coming years to mitigate the adverse effects of screen time. So a lot of my effort or my research is talking about bringing nature in children's everyday lives, especially homes, schools, childcare centers, and other everyday spaces. And I would like to talk about these charts here a little bit to mention the importance of bringing nature in schools, preschools, childcare centers, and homes. These statistics shows that 7 out of 10 Americans can walk to a local park, but only 12% people visit parks 51 times or more per year. That means roughly once a week. And parents with kids, the average is only 34.2 times per year. But we need the daily dose of nature to mitigate the adverse effects of screen time. or to acquire the other benefits of nature. Screen time happens daily, so what should we do to arrange green time daily? So that's why this work is important. And going back to the conversation of curiosity, so let's start by trying to defining early scientific curiosity. And it is not easy thing to define, as I learned. So there is an entire article written by one of my very favorite authors, Jamie Chiru, Children's Scientific Curiosity in Search of an Operational Definition of an Elusive Concept. So the authors admit that curiosity, especially early scientific curiosity, is an elusive concept. But the definition that they came up with in this article, the threshold of desired uncertainty in the environment, which leads to exploratory behavior. So I'll read it one more time because it's really interesting and talking about three complex and connected concepts. The threshold of desired uncertainty in the environment, which leads to exploratory behavior. But then again, I also compiled all the famous definitions of curiosity, and I'm not going to read through all of them, but if we try to highlight or try to funnel down what we are learning about curiosity and the role of environment in the early years, these are the words marked in red, comes up again and again. Exploration, environment, manipulation, discovery, experimentation, collaboration, conversation, shared discovery, novelty, complexity, uncertainty, surprise, ambiguity. I'll read the last definition because I think it provides a very interesting concept about gap. So, according to George Loewenstein, curiosity arises when people perceive a gap between what they know and what they want to know. And the design implication of that could be design environments that provoke questions and invite investigation. So, if we um, summarize what we learned from all of those definitions, we can think about curiosity principles that can be applied to playground design or any outdoor natural environment design for children. First, uncertain environments. We can also call it ambiguity. Second, environment with prompts, questions, answers, actions. And third, flexible, alterable environments, children as creators. The first design concept I would like to discuss is creating uncertain environments. These are environments that are ambiguous enough to create a gap in children's understanding, which naturally invites exploration. When children encounter something they do not fully understand, their curiosity is triggered and they begin to investigate. Translating this idea into design is not always straightforward. One helpful approach is to think about designing with nature. Natural environments are inherently variable, complex, and somewhat unpredictable. And because of these, they naturally create the kind of uncertainty that spark curiosity. And bringing more nature into play environments can therefore help create this um, uncertainty or this productive uncertainty. And the picture that you're seeing, this is from Will Smith Zoo School, a beautiful school in San Antonio, Texas. I'm going to show a lot of picture of the zoo school, so I'll talk briefly about it. This is a unique school close to the zoo, and what is really unique about the environment is it's fully natural. There is rarely any plastic play structure or things like that. It's a mostly a natural environment. But what is more unique is that children in that school spend almost the entire day outside. So we thought that it's a wonderful opportunity for us to learn. So we went there and stayed for 2 days and observed children, took notes, mapped children's behavior, recorded videos, and a lot of our data and paper are connected with the zoo school. So look into this environment. I'm not sure if it's designed, but this particular corner of the Will Smith Zoo School doesn't have a purpose, right? It is natural, of course, but it does not tell children what exactly the purpose of this environment is. The ambiguity that we are talking about is present. But this was a very favorite space for children. They come here, they climb that rocky surface, they engage in conversation and all. Um, and more pictures of the zoo school and how nature or bringing more nature can create that uncertainty. But we also need to think about not just natural environment, but also what nature produces. This is a good example of a toy without instruction. So an abstract toy, coffees in a seed pod, which does not immediately tell children how to play with it, but the possibilities are endless. And uncertainty and ambiguity do not only come from nature, they can also be created through abstraction in design. One approach I really appreciate is bringing public art and thought provoking objects into playground environments. Sculptures, abstract play structures, and unusual forms can introduce elements that are not immediately obvious in their purpose. In the example shown here, abstract three-dimensional forms, colors, and shapes create a sense of ambiguity. And because the objects do not clearly tell children how they should be used, they invite interpretation, imagination, experimentation. And this kind of ambiguity can provoke curious behaviors and encourage children to explore the environment in their own ways. And it's not just about abstract environment, also about abstract toy. So when I went to the zoo school, the very beginning of the day, we were outside. Children are still not there, and I saw this carved plywood piece. I saw several of them, and I did not realize the endless play possibilities these carved plywood provide. But when children came outside and started playing with this carved plywood piece, it was fascinating. For some children, it was a balancing toy. For some more little kids, it was a climbing tool. In the sand and water play area, this plywood was used as a bridge. I even saw a boy and a girl trying to use this plywood as a seesaw. So it was fascinating. The second concept is designing curiosity prompts. In some ways, this is the opposite of the first concept. So instead of relying entirely on uncertainty or ambiguity, this approach involves intentionally designing elements that act as prompts for exploration, discussion, and collaboration. These prompts can encourage children to ask questions, work together, and search for solutions. The example from the zoo school illustrated here shows this idea really well. A metal frame structure holds several large branches that are intentionally heavy and long. And because of their size, a single child cannot easily move them alone. The design naturally encourages children to collaborate in order to interact with the materials. And this is a powerful example of how designers can leave subtle clues in the environment that stimulate curiosity driven behaviors, such as cooperation, questioning, and experimentation. And sand and water play areas in playgrounds can also benefit from incorporating curiosity prompts. And sand and water are already powerful loose parts and sensory play elements. But thoughtful design prompts can further encourage scientific curiosity and deeper engagement. Again, an example from the zoo school. As you can see that the bamboo channel at the far end allows water to flow towards the sand play area. When water is introduced into sand play, the possibilities for experimentation and exploration become almost endless. And you can also notice the carved plywood piece behind, used as a small bridge over the waterway that children created. What is interesting here is that the environment provides materials and gentle prompts while children themselves invent the systems and the solutions through play. The Gathering Place in Tulsa offers a more elaborate and likely more expensive example of curiosity prompts in their water play zone. In this playground, a series of engaging water engineering structures are carefully designed to spark children's curiosity. These elements invite children to experiment with water flow, observe cause and effect, and collaborate with others as they manipulate channels, gates, and moving parts. And through these playful systems, children naturally begin to explore ideas related to engineering, physics, and problem solving while simply engaging in play. This is another exciting example of curiosity prompts in playground design. This submerged whale is technically a climbing structure, but it likely does much more than simply supporting climbing, right? It invites children to ask questions and start conversation. For example, children might wonder about the rough, bumpy elements on the whale's body, the barnacles, and these features can prompt questions such as what those bumps are and why whales have them. In this way, the structure becomes more than a play object. It becomes a prompt for curiosity, discussion, asking questions, and learning about the natural world. And finally, the third concept is creating flexible or alterable environments. When children can imagine, design, and create their own play experiences, in these environments, the space is not fixed or fully predetermined by the designer. Instead, children are able to modify and shape the environment through their actions. Natural and non-natural loose parts are as an excellent way to support the idea. Materials such as sticks, stones, branches, sand, water, and movable objects allow children to build, rearrange, and experiment. These materials give children the opportunity to become designers of their own play experiences. And that encourages creativity, problem solving, and of course, curious behaviors. I work a lot with a company called Playcore, and this is a play brand they have which I really like. It is called Snark Play by Ultra Play. It's an example of loose purse play that allows children to design their own play experiences. And the system provides a variety of forms, shapes, and components that children can move, combine, and rearrange. And because the pieces can be configured in many different ways, the possibilities for play are also almost endless. Now I'm going to talk about our findings that relate to these three concepts. The first paper that I'm going to talk about is Rethinking Traditional Playgrounds, Temporary Landscape Intervention to Advance Informal Early STEM Learning in Outdoors. So what we did for this study is we temporarily change outdoor play environment of a childcare center located here in Lubbock County, Texas. So based on our extensive literature and the concepts that I discussed, we did a temporary intervention and we brought together a lot of those elements that brings uncertainty, ambiguity, flexibility, and the characteristics that we talked about. And we did before and after behavior mapping. Behavior mapping is mapping children on their location and writing down their different kinds of behavior. So the before and after intervention shows that the different kinds of behavior that we associate with STEM learning increased after this intervention done in the play environment. So this was a fascinating research, but it also had its limitation. We did a temporary intervention, and children are often drawn to novel play elements. And we did 1 week of observation, but we still do not know how much the novelty contributed to the increased STEM learning behaviors. Also, behavior mapping is kind of momentary. So we're observing children for a little bit of time, not extensive period of time. But for me, when it comes to learning or understanding curiosity or science and STEM learning, momentary behavior often does not tell you the full story. So the second paper that I'm going to talk about briefly is one of our favorite work. And I talked about the zoo school so much, so we actually were fortunate to write a paper on our observation for the zoo school. So we kind of changed our approach in this research. Instead of doing behavior mapping, we relied on video data. So we did time sampling of our video data and extensively code those videos and process the data. So this approach really helped us to um, um, go in depth. So we are not just momentarily observing children, but we are also listening to their conversations, listening to the questions they're asking, or we had the opportunity to see how children interact with the environment over a longer period of time. And the zoo school was a really good setting for that because there was an opportunity to observe extensive engagement of children with nature. And this is how the video analysis data looks like. So we are doing time sampling of the video, but at the same time, we are coding all of the different behaviors that are meaningful to us that we connect or associated with STEM learning. So based on this in-depth analysis, we were able to then look into the environments and understand the association. Here you can see the frequency of STEM learning behaviors across the diverse play and learning settings. And it's not surprising that loose parts play or movable play structures or more natural areas of the play environment, plants, trees, shrubs, edible garden, are kind of the top environments with frequencies of STEM learning behaviors. And building construction and cause and effect activities were also notably more um, visible in sand and water play and loose spurts play areas. And that kind of takes us back to the different concept that I was talking about. So we have kind of the preliminary scientific evidence to support this concept. So when we are thinking about outdoor environment, be that in childcare centers or schools, or outdoor environment in the sense of parks and playgrounds, these three principles can be a new way to look into design strategies. Uncertain environments or ambiguity, environments with prompts, questions, answers, and actions, flexible, alterable environments, children as creators. These are not new concepts, but when still today, when we think about designing a new playground, I think the way the common design philosophy or um, any cities or park and recreation thinks about, of course, physical activity being the most important and predominant element of design. And that's not wrong. Of course, physical activity is really important. But going back to the concept of whole child model, we need to rethink our design considerations a little bit. So for our future research, what we are trying to do is to come up with a kind of a rating of the different environmental quality we just talked about. For example, what constitutes uncertain environments? Um, the uncertain environments is probably the most challenging piece to measure because it's uncertain, it's ambiguous. So how do we say something is ambiguous? So that is leading us back to the literature and trying to understand how in a given environment, we can rate different elements in terms of uncertainty or ambiguity. The other aspects are probably easier when you're thinking about flexible, alterable environments, whether the play space has a loose sparse play area. We just saw the example of the snark play and the kind of the metal structure and branches in the zoo school. So those kind of environment adds to the flexibility of a play environment. So now we are going back to our zoo school research and reassessing the environment in terms of these three new concepts to better understand how they connect with children's STEM learning behaviors. So I'm towards the end of my presentation. So going back to the garden question, why does my toddler want to play with the box and not the toy? And we can think about the box being more open-ended, flexible, exploratory, transformable, and the box doesn't come with any instruction. The toy, on the other hand, is predefined, fixed, single function, predictable, and comes with instruction. So going back to this diagram, kind of the dream is to build collaboration, work together, and create more evidences across all of the domains. I think that is really important, given um, bringing more nature to children's everyday life has new context in this digital era of screen time. So we need to create more evidence that connecting nature with children is not just about one or two domains, but it serves the whole child model. And at the same time, we need more examples like the zoo school or the snark play or more environments where we can truly see these things, these relationships happening, not just the purpose of research, but also for the purpose of demonstration. Yeah, I think that's all I have today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If any of you have questions, please feel free to share them in the chat. Oh, we already have one from Melody. Have you done any pre or post studies in a park setting similar to the childcare you temporarily transformed?
We have done pre, but not many posts because I haven't got an opportunity for large scale intervention in parks. A lot of our study, the case study is really important and the timing of different things. But we are always looking for opportunity, but haven't done pre and post in park settings. But that's a great question, something that I would love to do.
Melody said she'd be happy to partner with you on some projects here in
Oh,
Austin.
that's wonderful. Yeah, please shoot me an email. I'm always looking for people from parks and rec and to work together. I mean, I work with the Play Core a lot. They're mostly connected with parks, but it would be a wonderful opportunity. Yeah, thank you.
Um, Next up is could you share the links to the studies that you did with your PhD student?
Yes, they're all open-ended except for one. Would it be easier to send the PDF to Sarah and then Sarah can
Yeah, if
can
you
you?
want to
Yeah,
send them to me, I
yeah,
can send them when I send out the
yeah,
recording.
yeah. I'll send the PDFs of the three article that I mostly talked about with Sarah, and then Sarah can distribute them. Yeah, absolutely.
Great. Another question from Bird is what is the role or could be the role of explicit instruction in a playground setting?
So my work is mostly with early childhood. So one of the argument is early childhood should be free. So a lot of things would be free exploration for children. So I haven't done a lot of work with school agers. My goal is to create environments where children would be free to play and engage and explore. So a lot of these perspectives are based on that. So I'm not haven't thought about instructions in that way. I think the instruction would be how we can promote free play, free engagement. Of course, there are concerns of safety and other things. That's a whole different domain of its own. But the free interaction with nature is something I believe is really important, especially in the early years.
Hey, given that answer, Damika, I hope it's okay if I edit your question a little bit, which is, have you thought or do you know anyone looking at these design standards with secondary education environments?
Uh, when it comes to parks for learning, and we have done it recently. So I teach a studio called Landscape for Learning. So all of the students, they kind of developed park-based learning assessment tool. And that paper would come out soon. We are very close to publishing that. But what I found is that all the existing park assessment, are heavily focused on physical activity, recreation, sometimes social behavior and gathering, but not so much on parks for learning. When I looked into the literature, it's mostly how a school can visit a park and address some of their curriculum, but not so much how parks can be places for informal or non-formal learning. We're hoping to. Um, I'm working with my students on that paper, which is exciting because we are talking about school agers and what kind of park do we really want for school agers? So there are some non-formal or informal nature-based learning may happen, uh, but I haven't seen any particular group or person or researcher working on this topic. It's a little bit under research in my mind when it comes to park-based natural learning.
Great. We don't have another question yet in the chat. So while people think, I'm going to put our evaluation in the chat. So if you wouldn't mind doing our evaluation, that helps us know how webinars are going. And then also, we're all educators here. We know how great evaluation is. It helps us share also with our presenter. So if you wouldn't mind filling that out. And then our next webinar that's coming out is called Heat Happens, Simple Ways to Keep Children Cool, especially appropriate as we enter our summer months here in Texas. Um, And lastly, our big announcement is we officially have announced our dates and location for our 2026 summit. So, our summit will be December 9th through 11th in San Antonio. So, we would love to see all of you there. The request for session proposals will open up on May 1st. I hope I see a session similar to this in the session proposals. Um, so, yeah, we would love to hear from you. Any other questions out there? Well, thank you so much, Montazar. It's always a pleasure to have you working with us. I know I am privileged that we get to work with you so much with our early childhood work. So
Mhm.
it was great to have you come and share your knowledge with us on our webinar today.
Yeah, thank you for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you.
Thank you, and everyone have a fantastic rest of your Wednesday.